Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to CISSP Magazine. You're listening to a new Redefining Security podcast. Have you ever thought that we are selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Perhaps we are. So let's look at how we can organize a successful InfoSec program that integrates people, process, technology, and culture to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever. HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hightrustalliance.net.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Marco.
Sean.
Do you have your CISSP?
No, I don't even know what that is.
You're screwed. You can't be a CISO now.
I'm gonna have to live with that. I'll just talk with them. And you know what is gonna be my question? It's gonna be, do you need that qualification in order to be a CISO?
Well, I have it, so I can be one. Clearly.
Why are you not?
That's a good question.
Is that a default? Like you get that qualification and then you become a CISO, or?
Well, this all begs the question, Marco. Is it the chicken or the egg that came first? Is it the CISO or the CISSP? And I hesitate a little bit making fun of certifications, and anything that helps people learn and grow is important. And the question for me kind of shifts more toward, are we keeping people out of the role, and or are we not giving them the chops they need to be successful in the role? Mm-hmm. And there was a post I came across on LinkedIn from Brian Bobo, who's joining us today. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
And thanks for having me. And
the catalyst for the post was you shouldn't require a CISSP for your CISO. And it was an interesting question, and there was a ton of feedback in the thread there, and perhaps we'll cover some of these things. But Brian, before we get to that whole conversation, maybe just a few words about yourself and what you're up to.
Thanks for having me. And so I am the CIO and CISO of a healthcare IT company. We provide two EHRs as products, so we're a software company along with services to support healthcare providers. So working a lot around, securing the products, making sure our clients are secure. We offer two of the products, both on-prem or we'll host it for you. So we do a lot of work securing our clients' data and providing them the types of services around that they need. So along with the CIO stuff that comes along with being the CIO. So
another interesting point, which maybe that's another conversation. Why is it separate and how do they connect? But to get into this particular point, so your post says that most of what you do as a CISO doesn't really connect to the CPEs required, continuing performance. I can't remember what CPE stands for, but anyway, the credits you need to keep the cert current. Mm-hmm. And so then it begs the question, well, does a cert then help in your role? Do you need it to get into the role? So what's the catalyst for this post? What prompted you to actually put that up?
Well, I was renewing my certification, and I've read posts in the past where I remember one gentleman in particular said that he retired his CISSP because it wasn't worth it had served its purpose. It really wasn't doing anything more for him. And so I'm renewing it. I'm looking at trying to, document my continuing education credits so I can, stay certified. And I'm looking at all of the options of things I can put in there. And I was really struggling saying, you know what, the things I'm doing as a CISO don't translate into this. And taking, some of the free courses on, ethical hacking or something like that, it's not really helpful as a CISO. Maybe I missed it, but I couldn't find a place where I could take credit for leading, a security incident and, having to deal with clients and all of the things that go into a security incident, which to me is the real practical experience. If you want to get on the technical side of being a CISO, it's how do you manage incidents? How do you manage your team managing incidents? How do you manage the technical people? There's some CISOs that are probably in smaller companies that are, much more hands-on, but, once you get to a decent sized company as a CISO, you should be leading people through that, not doing it yourself anymore. And I just thought, this is really a technical type of certification. It's really hard to get. It's fantastic. It says a lot about a lot of things of a particular person, but I don't really feel like it translates into what a CISO needs to be doing. I think it does do a nice job of showing that maybe they have a good understanding of the technical side of things. They have a good understanding of frameworks and some of those types of things. But honestly, at this point in my career, I don't know if it's that helpful anymore.
Let me ask you something, because I think we need to put it into the right context, and context in this case is also the evolution and where we are now compared to where we were 3, 5, 10 years ago. So how often we talked about the business of security, how the CISO sits at the board, needs to understand the business and how to protect it. So maybe we want to talk a little bit about that from your perspective. How did you get to the point to say, do I still need it or not? And was it a good thing that I had it when, I don't know, 5 years ago? Just throwing the time there.
Yeah, I think certifications are good to show your abilities, to show your competence in lieu of experience. But experience is way more valuable than certifications ever will be. And so I think when I look at my background now, I've been I think this is the third time I've been a CISO. I've been director level for, Fortune 200 company and 155 companies doing incident response. I ran security operations center for one of the top retailers in the country. When it comes to security experience, I would say that experience I have is much more valuable than a CISSP, to the point where it just shouldn't matter anymore. And I think that if not getting the tunnel vision, and it doesn't matter what certification you pick. There's some fantastic hackers out there that probably have 0 certifications because they don't care. and getting a certification wouldn't make them any better at their jobs. So
here's the $1 million question. Could that hacker become a CISO?
Depends. That's piece of it, right? You get to a certain level, and it doesn't matter if it's CISO, a CIO, or any other technical area. You need to be able to get away from being technical, and you understand what right looks like anymore. I worked for a guy that used to be a mainframe programmer. I'm pretty confident he probably couldn't do that anymore. Well, maybe a mainframe, they don't change that much. But, a lot of the technical backgrounds people have, by the time, they're in a senior leadership position, the technology's changed so much, they can't do that anymore. So they're really just bringing the perspective of what does right look like? What does it take to, develop a product? What does it take to, develop an application? And if they can't get out of the weeds, then it's they'll become one of the micromanagers, one of those, folks you just don't really want to work for. You need to be able to step back. And then the other part of it is you have to be able to translate all that's going on to the board and to the CEO and to the president of the company, the COOs, and the business, what is going on in ways that they can understand it. That takes some practice and experience, and you have to grow into that role as well. And I'd say the absolute most important and most relevant skill set at a senior level when you're leading teams is hiring good people, finding good people, hiring good people, allowing good people to do their jobs, enabling them to do their jobs, trusting them to do their jobs, and then getting out of their way. And if you can do that, anybody could be a CISO. If you have the right team, the right team takes care of things. It makes your life easy as a leader, and it does. That's across the board. That's not a CISO comment, really.
So here's an observation I'd like to make, and it makes me think about other professions. Mm-hmm. They say you need to know the rules in order to break the rules, right? You can't just be mm-hmm. there and be a writer that's like, I don't follow the grammar, but you don't follow it, but you know what the real rules are. Just an example. And the same thing goes to be a musician, to be, to excel in any profession. Yeah. So my question is here, are we just jumping too ahead of the problem and thinking about the CISO to this person that just one day somebody like, okay, I'm going to be a CISO, but the truth is you do need the basic, more than basic knowledge. So mm-hmm. I think the question is, are those programs still adequate to that? Is that the issue? Because somewhere you have to educate yourself. Even if you are a hacker and you do it yourself, you need to reach that level of knowledge that it qualify you to be a CISO. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm kind of torn. I think, like I said earlier in your career, maybe when you don't have the experience, that's a good certification to have, but it does not replace experience. It does demonstrate a certain level of knowledge, which I think is important. I think the other component of this is it's interesting when you look at the security field. There's, I don't know how many certifications you can get, just tons of them. And but you go to somewhere else, like you go to IT, and there's not a lot of certifications. People will go and do it, but they don't do it for their careers. They do it, because they want to learn Cisco or something like that. And so I think part of it is that there's so many of them that they've, beyond CISSP, that they kind of diluted the value of them. And I see security folks that on LinkedIn with like 15 different certifications. And I'm thinking at some point that's not really helping you anymore. And when I mentor people, I tell them, I was talking to a gentleman, he was asking, well, how do I become a CISO? And I said, well, your 20 certifications aren't helping. It makes you look like you're a technical practitioner. You need, which you are, but you need to make the jump into leadership. You need to become a leader. And those certifications almost detract from that in my view. So I think that part of it is breaking the culture that it's almost like it was a gold rush for these certification companies. When security started becoming important, they started creating more certifications, more ways to charge people for things. And I think at some point you need to break out of that and get experience and focus on that more than another certification, whether it's CISSP or not. So
let's talk about that entry level then. And I don't know where that line is drawn, entry level CISO, mm-hmm. and is it named something different? Is it just the security manager, CISO in training? And because what I'm trying to figure out, and I like Marco's music analogy. Mm-hmm. I did some drum work in high school. I'm not very schooled at it. I can't read drum music. I can read other music, and I know nothing about guitar. But I was thinking the other day, okay, if I wanted to pick up and play in a band, I could probably, even without proper formal percussion training, do most of what I need to actually perform with a rock band, let's say. Mm-hmm. But there are going to be things that I'm missing. Mm-hmm. And So in some companies, if we continue with the music example, in some bands I might be wildly successful, and other ones I'm going to suck. I'm wondering if there's a similar analogy for small companies, large companies, where you know that what you get with the certification and some areas of experience is going to be enough to be a CISO, but you're going to hit some part of a market or an industry or some tech stack that just says you don't have it.
Yeah. I think using that analogy, if you're going to put a band together and you were going to pick a drummer, would you pick a drummer that's played in a number of different bands, maybe a couple different genres, and has a lot of experience, or would you pick the one that went and got a music degree from, pick a school, and so i.e. a certification, and which one would you pick? I mean, it probably depends, right, on what you're trying to get out of it, and then you're going to have an interview, like, they're going to try out for the band, and you're going to pick the one you think is going to be the best choice. And I think, to your point, an entry-level CISO really needs this. It starts at the manager level, and that's where you learn. When you start leading other people, that's when you start learning the core leadership pieces you need to know, and start stepping back a little bit from the technical side of it as you build your experience. The other real challenge in security that you don't see elsewhere with technology and just in general is that security touches everything. So there is no way that you'll ever have the technical background to know everything going on in a given company. I worked for a Fortune, I don't even know what level it is now, the retailer, and I swear their technology approach was they had one of everything. Like there wasn't, AS400 and mainframes and Linux and Windows, and there's no way you could know all of that. So you had to be, part of the switch that you have to figure out if you are really technical is how do you become comfortable with ambiguity? How do you become comfortable listening to the Linux guy or gal tell you about a problem, even though you don't know anything about Linux, and understanding what right looks like. And I'll just share kind of a side story. One of my proudest moments was listening to the Linux guy tell me about a problem he had. And I said, hey, did you look at it this way instead? And he was like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. And it was because I swear it's because I didn't know Linux that I could look at it differently than he did. And I saw a pattern that he didn't see that helped him fix that problem. But so that's the part that I think a lot of people maybe struggle with a little bit is, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome in this stuff too, right? Because you're talking to technical people and somebody that's been a DBA for 25 years, and I've never been a DBA. So you have to be open to asking dumb questions and maybe I'm not right every time and all those kind of things, and be very collaborative to understand how you get to the right solution and what right looks like, which isn't a security problem. That's a technical problem, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, it sounds to me that there are different kind of CISO, and I've seen some post comment on your post, like, well, it depends. And you said that you brought the example of, again, it's going to be hard for me to break from the music metaphor right now because, it's kind of like what I love. But it really makes sense, in my opinion, here. Like, you need a creative role. You need more of a technical role. So you need the Berkeley graduate of the School of Music, or you need the guy that can just get the rhythm, whatever it goes. And I feel like it depends on the company. It depends in the way, shouldn't be the company the one that decide what kind of CISO they want?
Yeah, I think so. And like that music analogy, right? Not every drummer is appropriate for every band. So there's a fit piece of it. But the part that's a little tough, I think, is that sometimes companies don't really know what a CISO should be doing. Maybe they had one before. They don't really know what a CISO does. They know they do security stuff and they know they need one. But I don't know if they're always real keen on what the qualifications should be for what they need, because they just don't know. They don't get it. They don't understand. It's kind of a black box to them in some ways, and so I think there's that challenge. Other companies obviously know exactly what they need, exactly what they want. So yeah, I think it depends is a great way to phrase that in terms of qualifications. So, I mean, I work for a software company now. What the kind of things I'm involved in are very different than when I worked for a retailer or when I worked for an airline. There's a lot of similarities, but we're in a completely different line of business and a completely different sector of the economy too. Healthcare is a whole nother animal. So, but that also shows you that with the right skill sets, you can translate security into any industry. You can move around, and as long as you can learn the business and you challenge yourself it's a learning curve. I mean, it's taken me 2 years and I still don't think I still got a lot to learn about healthcare.
And you probably still always have to learn, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the company then has some preconceived, because I guess what I was wondering, you kind of touched on it, is, okay, the executive staff doesn't know what they need. So there's a certification, CISSP, Security Plus, whatever it is, something that says security in it that makes the interviewing process easier, right? The job requirement, we want people that have this. So those people come in, presumably they can speak wisely about stuff, but it may not be connected to the business. So how can organizations kind of break free of that cycle where they may not know, they're not in the Fortune 100 or 200, and they need somebody who can manage security, don't know how to break free of that understanding of what the CISSP brings, and somebody just sounds smart?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you're talking, it kind of makes me think about, I think the CIO role probably went through similar transition where, it was the tech guy that took care of all the computers and stuff. And you kind of, they were a necessary evil, but they were just a cost center. They didn't really do anything for you other than you had to have one. And now they've evolved into business enablers. A lot of them own revenue streams. They have a seat at the table. They're reporting to the CEO. They're reporting directly to the board, and reporting to the board very regularly, where in the past maybe that didn't happen very often. And CISOs are starting to get into that same kind of a place. And I think maybe the way to look at it is, how would you hire a CIO, and what qualities would you look for in a CIO? And look for those same things, only with a person that has an information security background who brings the security knowledge to the table. So the same kind of leadership stuff you would look for, the same strategic visions, the same, budget mindset, the same people mindset. And I think that might be a way to break through it a little bit and think about what you really want in a CISO.
Yeah, there was a post or a comment, and I'll refrain from my point here. There's a comment from Julia, and she's saying that understanding finance, corporate strategy, marketing, leadership, operating models, they're all pivotal for success in any leadership role, including CISO role. Yeah. So how do organizations, presumably the exec staff, know that stuff? So how do they kind of translate their interview process, the job description, those types of things, and perhaps the general selection process to incorporate that stuff?
Yeah, I think one of the ways you do that when you're talking about the selection process is, I was just involved, the finance team here is hiring a new procurement leader, VP level, and I buy lots of stuff, when it comes to technology, being a CIO. And I was involved in that interview process. And I think, a way to do that is that you get some of the business leaders involved in the CISO interview process from the different, areas and skill sets to ask those kind of questions. My experience has been interviewing as a CISO. I talk to the CIO, I might talk to the general counsel, talk to the HR person, and then I talk to some technical people that know security. But there's not a lot of business questions that are being asked. And I think that may be why some companies are struggling with, well, how do we get a CISO that's going to operate at the level we want them to? Because they're not really looking for that level until they show up and they're already hired.
And that's a great point. Sorry, Sean, but I can't not think about the conversation we had with Scott Olson about the leadership and the fact that you need to be an inspired leader. And one of the things that touched the most about when you build a team and you get your own self fulfillment by not doing things, but by picking the right people for the right job and get fulfillment by the job that gets done. Doesn't matter who is playing in what role on the field. And I think this is the kind of conversation that we need to do right now, which is, as you say, you compare a CISO to a CEO. How do you pick a CEO? You pick based on the capacity to understand the business, but also to put together a team that is going to work. So, and in that case, you don't need to resolve an issue yourself. You just need to have the right person to resolve that issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's all about people. And that's, I'll leave a position open for 9 months until I can find the right person. Despite the pain and everything else, I'll interview people I know can do it, but they're not the right fit. They're not a leader. They're not, all these non-technical things. And that makes all the difference, is having the right team. And that makes the job much easier, obviously. And then again, you can't keep up with the technology anyway. So you really need sharp people that are doing that and that you can trust. And, but yeah, I couldn't agree more about the leadership piece of it. And being a genuine leader, true to yourself, be yourself as a leader, and truly caring about people, is really, really important. And then the other piece of all this is the CISO that I think sometimes gets overlooked is, and any leader at that level, you need to mentor your team. You need to mentor those managers and directors so they can be CISOs someday. Teach them the different aspects of the job that maybe aren't so evident, like the legal aspects of being a CISO are hugely important. And I think a lot of CISOs some of them aren't that in tune with the legal side of the job and understanding that in the heat of the moment, in an incident, how do you manage that, knowing that you're probably going to get sued when it's all said and done. And then how do you mitigate those risks? And so I always try to take time with my directors and my leaders. And when I do something that doesn't necessarily, they're kind of like, why'd you do that? And I try to explain to them, here's the purpose of this. It's either I'm managing the executives, I'm managing legal risk, or here's why I'm doing this. Not just I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to tell you to go do that. And so,
yeah, I love that, Brian. And one thing that comes to mind, there was another one of the comments was, well, what is the path? And somebody mentioned having a PMP. And I was just wondering, are there other skills or activities? I mean, the PMP comes to mind for me, especially when you at the beginning, you're talking about, it's all about managing incidents. So, okay, there's an event, you have to rally a team and get from A to Z quickly with on target and on time, and hopefully on budget if there is such a thing. So are there things like that, or other things that we should consider as a path?
It's funny, if you look at my path, going all the way back to the beginning, I enlisted in the Army and I was in counterintelligence, which is I didn't know any better at the time. I just thought it'd be cool. It'd be really interesting. And I learned a lot about social engineering because that's what spying is all about. And counterintelligence is trying to stop spies. And even if you're private, you at least learn about it, right? Like I saw any spies, but, and then I went a path in the Army where it was a leadership type role where I was in tanks. and I went to infantry school and as an officer. I mean, I didn't do it. That had nothing to do with security. I mean, I learned a lot about physical security in some ways, or the principles of them, right? And then I worked in heavy manufacturing, and I worked in warehouses for Target, and none of it. It was all really leadership roles that prepared me for an opportunity I got with Target to switch over to security back before security was cool and everybody wanted to do it. Well, not everyone wants to do it, but it was when it was still kind of that necessary evil. And just dumb luck, worked for a company that said, hey, you're a leader, you can figure out the other pieces of it. But we need leaders. And that's what gave me my opportunity. But I'd say the path should be varied, because if all you've done is security and all you did, like you went to school to be a drummer and that's all you've ever done, and you don't know, how to play in a rock band because the school didn't, that kind of stuff, maybe that's too specialized of a path when, maybe, so a lot of people, I think, a lot of great security people come from an IT background. Because people that are seeking out leadership positions is the number one thing. Leadership experience, I think, is more important than anything. And then there's just intangible things that you can't really put a finger on, of course. The other thing I always tell people is just be open to opportunities, because some people think, I just need to go down the security path and just do security stuff. Well, what if somewhere down the path someone says, hey, I'd like you to lead the networking team in the CIO world? You should do that, because that experience will directly help you to become a CISO, because now you know more about technology. Or if you have an opportunity to lead business transformation or do something a little bit different, I always tell people to be open to that, because you just don't know where the path's going to lead you. And all these different experiences help build you as a person, as a leader, and gives you perspective to be successful. And a lot of it, I think, maybe that's what it is. It comes down to perspective more than anything.
I like that, because I think when you enter the profession, any profession, you need to have some kind of qualification, right? Or to prove by a test that you don't need that certification, but you know how to deal with those things, right? You learn it yourself. You learn it in a school, in an educational environment. So do you think, if you're going to look into the future, that there may be eventually a place for something that prepare people to be CISO at a certain point? I'm thinking like an MBA, like, a master in security instead of, in economy or business. Would there be an idea, or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I mean, I think a master's that is like an MBA for security. So help you learn. I mean, I got my MBA just because my background I didn't take business courses in my undergrad. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I learned more about marketing and I had a little bit of finance, but I learned a lot more about finance, a lot more about how businesses operate. And I did that just to expand my knowledge. I think that's the difference, though. Like, so if you go and get a master's in cybersecurity, I'm not sure what that all entails. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know what the curriculum looks like at all, but it tells me that you super hyper specialized in security, which is kind of funny because you can't really specialize in it, right? Because there's so much technology, there's so many different components of it. You could be an incident responder, you could be a hacker, you could be a defender, you could be, there's so many different things you can do. But I think having a business perspective is something would be a differentiator.
I wanted to ask you that question, kind of like to think about that, and the fact that your answer was like, I went and got an MBA. So if I have to create the college or master curriculum, I would say, you know what, you need a little bit of psychology, a little bit of business, a little bit of organization structure, a little bit of business and marketing, and sure, the core may be security, how you handle security. So it is, in the end, this ideal bucket where a little bit of everything that a CISO need it's there. And ultimately, you need to be the kind of person that can do that. You need to be a leader.
Yeah.
And you
It's
don't
almost
teach
like
that.
You need a technical liberal arts degree.
Exactly.
So
one of them did comment on the music degree, and we probably don't want to go there for Equifax. But I think as we wrap here, I think what I'm hearing, and we haven't talked about it in this way, but sticking with the music analogy, it's not the drummer or the singer or the guitar player or the flutist or cellist or whatever they are. But I guess somebody needs to take the reins and lead and have some understanding of that. And I don't know if there's a course or a certification. Maybe this is the final question.
Yeah.
Is if we're looking for a conductor, somebody who can lead a team through stuff, either protection or defense or response, how does one get the chops if they don't have an opportunity to have the experience yet?
It's a good question. I don't know how you get the chops. You can teach leadership to a point, but it's like everything else. I can teach people how to play the drums, but they need to practice. They need to actually do it. And I think that, that's what I advise people, hey, how do I become a CISO? And I look at, you haven't been a manager yet. You need to go be a manager. You need to go lead people. You've been a technical person for however long, and you probably know everything you need to know from a technical standpoint. And you can translate that knowledge into other technologies, and you kind of get it, right? You get the technology piece, but you really need to go out and you need to work with people. You need to lead people. You need to try to get them to do things they maybe don't want to do. And how do you deal with tough times and difficult behaviors and all those kind of things that you can't teach. You got to do that, I think. And then how do you manage your boss, right? How do you manage the board?
Managing the board, exactly. Yeah. Lots to consider there, and I think we've beaten the certification horse to a pulp at this point. Certainly a role for it. Experience in managing a team and leading a team is really the criteria I'm hearing for this.
Yeah. I think it's like everything else, take it in perspective. Understand what it gives you or what it doesn't give you when you're hiring a candidate, what it means or doesn't mean. Just don't put too much in that basket, and understand what are the other pieces that the CISSP doesn't tell you that person has, and how do you make sure you're getting that as part of the package.
Yeah, maybe in the end, the CISO is too broad of a definition. Maybe there are CISOs for different industries, CISOs for different maturity level of a company or size of a company. And so I want to say in the end, if you're going to look for one certification now to know that person is able to be a CISO, you're failing. Although I do think that you need certification for a lot of more specific roles in a company. So nobody is throwing the certification out of the window. It's just that to be a CISO, it requires a little bit more than that. And maybe not that at all. I don't know.
Perhaps. I still go back to nobody's looking for certifications for CIOs, CFOs, CROs, CDOs, CMOs. We can go down the list. I'm sure they exist, but it's not a requirement. Which goes to the point of it's what experience do you have and can you lead at that level? That's the devil's advocate there.
I think your post got a lot of feedback, a lot of different opinion, and I would love for people that listen to this conversation to do the same thing. Listen to what we said. I don't think we have a final answer, and having different perspective, feel free to let us know, and maybe we have another conversation.
Yeah.
Well, the link will be in the show notes for this episode, so I would encourage everybody to read Brian's initial post, all the feedback there. There's a lot of cool things being mentioned and stated there, in agreement and disagreement. Both sides That's the biggest level. So
I'll be a compromise.
Everybody read it and have a compromise. It's my way or the highway. Get the cert, I say. I'm kidding. All right. Now, in all seriousness, Brian, I want to thank you for putting that out there in the first place, and for agreeing to have a chat with us to dig into a little bit more. Hopefully, folks learned a little something and get to think. That's our main goal. So, thanks, Brian.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
HITRUST is a leading data protection standards development and certification organization that strives to safeguard sensitive information and manage information risk for global organizations across all industries and throughout the third-party supply chain. Learn more at hightrustalliance.net. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Security podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.